Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out a lot. So today, I want to talk about 7 reasons retro game collecting has gotten to where it is today. Super popular, super mainstream, and just a thing that so many people do. Just want to talk about 7 reasons it's a thing today. Why it's so mainstream. Now I'm not talking about generalities like, oh well, it's nostalgic. We played them, older people played them when they were young, or that retro games are great. They're so much fun. They're easy to pick up and play. I'm not talking about generalities like that. I'm talking about evolutionary steps in the history of game collecting and why it's such a big thing today. So let's do number 7. These are 7 reasons. Lucky 7, I guess you could say. So very quickly, one would be the internet. Now I'm not being that broad-based. I'm getting more specific. So let's go number 7. Fanzines, which is short for fan-made magazines. In the early 90s, retro game collectors, which there were a few, not relatively speaking, not that many, started, some of the more hardcore fans started publishing retro gaming magazines, and there were actually quite a few of these. These are just simple, stapled together papers for the most part, and I'll show you some of the more well-known ones, like the Digital Press fanzine. This is actually issue number 1. This dates back to September, October of 1991, so this is one of the very earliest ones, and very simple. Just, lists and reviews and, some images and some, just very simple black and white stuff. The 2600 Connection, published by Tim Duarte, I believe it was. That was a really popular one beginning in the early 90s, and, as you can see, a little Atari 2600 Action Pack review there, and, cartridge list, part 27, just a lot of, even a letters page. So, fans could connect and everything. And there were few and far between, but there were those of us who didn't throw away old games. We actively sought them out. And it was so easy to find stuff in the 80s and 90s. You could just pick up tons of stuff for dirt cheap. Some other fanzines that were important that people remember were Slapdash, published by Russ Perry, very well-known collector today. And one interesting one is the Atari Zone, because it was published by Dan, sorry if I'm butchering your name, Cavell, yeah, Cavell, I believe it is. And he does one of the gaming conventions. I believe it's the Midwest Gaming Classic. Sorry if I'm wrong about that, but so he published that one. And then for you Intellivision fans, there was Intellivision Lines. There were just so many of these. I'll just show you a couple, just a few more. The Laser, some a little more elaborate cover than maybe not the most beautiful cover, but sorry. But anyway, some pretty nice production, for a fanzine. Now this one's nice. Orphaned Computers and Game Systems. Kind of a sexy cover there. If you're into that sort of thing. There you go. Something about the Arcadia 2001. Or actually, that's the Bally Astrocade. So pretty cool there. And Spectrum. Yet another video game set. I have tons of these in a closet somewhere. And, they covered... In the early 90s, they were covering, Super Nintendo and the Genesis and everything, so they covered current games as well, but retro gaming was really given a push by these fanzines and getting collectors, just to unite and just to, get to know one another, to trade games through the mail and all that kind of stuff. So number 7 is fanzines. Number 6 is a rather broad category, books. Now there were quite a few, a small amount compared to today, but over the years, throughout the 1990s, there were a number of retro gaming books, and not nearly as many as there should be. I mentioned the Digital Press fanzine. Well, Digital Press started putting out a series of collector guides beginning in the early 90s. Before the internet really took off and got super mainstream, you could get these Digital Press guides, and they would have checklists, and they would have rarity ratings, and they would have price guides as well. And that kind of helped people start to realize, hey, these games are worth some money, not nearly as much as they are today, but they're worth something. And they had, pictures and everything. Pretty neat. This is like the 2nd edition from 1993, so there was an earlier edition, which I don't own. So they got started early 90s. That was really ahead of the curve in terms of retro game collecting. Here's another edition, and I use this one a lot to track my own collection. I'll go through here, check out what games I need or what I have or what which boxes I need or whatever. So kind of neat, just as far as checklists and rarity ratings and all that go. And the digital press guides grew into these monsters. They got with actual binding, much thicker books, and some of the games they would have actual write-ups. So that was pretty neat. So the digital press guides were important with collectors and gaming books. It sort of let gamers know what games are out there for each system. Before these digital press guides and before the internet, as I'd mentioned earlier, but in the early 90s, before most people had, easy access to the World Wide Web. If they were calling it by then, I believe they were. But anyway, I'm starting to ramble a little bit, which is way too early in the video to ramble. But anyway, these early digital press guides, for a lot of people, the first time they realized, hey, I had no idea there were so many games for the ColecoVision. I didn't know there were more than 400 games for the Atari 2600. I had no idea there was 125 Intellivision games. Wow, look at all these games. I didn't even know Game X was even created, like Galaxian. Maybe you didn't even know that was on the ColecoVision because it was a pretty rare title. But with these books, you could get complete checklists, very instrumental. Now, speaking of checklists and complete libraries of games, I have to mention ABC to the VCS, a directory of software for the Atari 2600. Now, Leonard did just a crude, stapled together, simple version of this with really tiny type back in the mid-90s, and I'm sure he will comment and tell you exactly when it was. I believe it was 94, I believe it was. But ABC to the VCS, this edition, he formed his own publishing company, Relenta Press, and this nice bookshelf edition with binding, looks really neat with screenshots and everything. Really nice book with summaries of each game for the Atari 2600, every original release, plus a lot of homebrews and all that kind of stuff. Really thorough, really comprehensive book, excellent book, and this was really instrumental. Came out in 2005. It was definitely ahead of the curve by a couple of years, which I will get to momentarily. 2006, 2007 is when retro gaming really started taking off mainstream, which I'll get to shortly, but Leonard Herman was ahead of the curve in that regard. And just really quick, speaking of Leonard Herman, here's early edition of Phoenix, The Fall and Rise of Home Video Games, perhaps the first edition. I'm sure Leonard will tell me in the comments what it is. It appears to be, but anyway, just real crude, or maybe a galley edition. I'm not even sure off the top of my head, but what you mainly need to know is that Phoenix 4 is in its current iteration has grown into an absolute monster. There's a color edition as well. So Leonard Herman doing ABC to the VCS and Phoenix 4, very instrumental in making video game collecting a thing, a mainstream thing. Number 5. Retro gaming conventions. Now, World of Atari in 1998, that sort of grew into the Classic Gaming Expo beginning in 1999, and this was the Classic Gaming Expo put on by Joe Santulli, John Hardy, and Sean Kelly, who then founded the National Video Game Museum 3 years or so ago. The Classic Gaming Expo was really influential in kickstarting a lot of other retro gaming conventions, like the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, like Classic Game Fest in Austin, like Midwest Gaming Classic in Milwaukee, many, many others. Video Game Summit, there are countless. Game On Expo in Phoenix by my good buddy John Lester. So many retro gaming conventions all over the country. And the Classic Gaming Expo showed people how it was done, and this has united game collectors across the country and has really just really made collecting fun and an in-person thing. You could go, just instead of just ordering things online or finding stuff, at local stores, you could go to gaming conventions and meet with like-minded people. My first video game convention was the 2003 Classic Gaming Expo in 2003, and I was amazed by what I saw. So many booths selling retro games. I'd never seen anything like it before. Stacks and stacks and stacks of Atari 2600 games, Atari 5200 games, ColecoVision and Intellivision, things I almost never saw at garage sales like the Bally Astrocade, like the Arcadia 2001, things like that, like even like things like the RCA Studio 2, the Coleco Telstar, on and on and on. Saw these things at the Classic Gaming Expos. Awesome. I met so many friends over the years at the Classic Gaming Expos and so many other conventions. This has really lit a fire under collectors to collect for more systems, to collect more games, to meet up with like-minded collectors, tournaments and all that stuff, all that has spurred retro game collecting to be really, really mainstream. That was number 5. So number 4, now 2006, 2007, as I mentioned before, is when retro game collecting got super, super mainstream. That's when it broke out into, just not being just sort of this niche hobby. 2006 is when the Wii Shop channel, that's when the Wii Shop channel started, and very easily, anyone with the most current system on the market could download and play games for systems like the NES, the Super NES, the TurboGrafx, the Sega Genesis. So that really motivated people to download and play these games, and not just to play them, but to want to seek out, the original ones, to get the original hardware. It was easy to play these games with the Wii Shop channel, but I really think it got people into wanting to know more about these games, wanting to get the original versions of these games, the cartridges and everything, and to just, dig retro gaming in general. So that was number 4, 2006, the Wii Shop channel, very important. Now, sort of related to this, number 3 is collections of classic console games on modern platforms. This sort of ties into the Wii Shop channel a little bit, but this is actually physical media. Things like the Activision Anthology for the PS2 and Intellivision Lives for the PS2. Now, these got people into playing a lot of these games for the first time, modern gamers, and it got nostalgia enthusiasts, old guys like myself, playing them on modern systems and playing some games they had never played before. Like, let's see, there's some never before release on Activision compilation. Games like Pitfall 2, Robot Tank, you get the idea. Classic Atari and Intellivision games played by modern gamers and by nostalgia enthusiasts on their old consoles. Now, what this did was, I believe it got people seeking out the old consoles and old games, or getting them out of their attics or whatever. For many people, that's how they discovered these games or played them for the first time, because they didn't grow up with them. And I believe what these did is not only help make these, games, people discover these games or, replay them, games that they played in their childhood. I think it caused people, a number of people, to go out and want to look for the original hardware and the original cartridges, because there's nothing like playing them, with the original joysticks on an old TV. So anyway, I think that did help somewhat. Just retro game collections for modern systems. Okay, number 2. Now, number 2 is a biggie, eBay. In the late 90s, when eBay really started taking off, to a degree, I started putting stuff, I think it was eBay 94, 95, sometime in the mid 90s is when eBay actually, became a thing. And the late 90s is when people I know started, selling items on it. And I started 97, 98, something like that. I started selling stuff on eBay. And just looking through eBay, I was really surprised to see that older games had gone up in value, that they were worth something at all, that people were paying $20, $25, and $30 for boxed ColecoVision games. Now, a lot of these games are especially rare today and even more highly sought after, and they go for hundreds or in some cases thousands of dollars. But in the early days of eBay, people were figuring out that, some of the harder to find games that people want to play or want to fill in holes in their collection were starting to get some value. And on eBay, it shocked me that games were actually worth some money. This, a few years before my first video game convention and that kind of thing, before retro gaming shops were popping up everywhere. That was number 2, eBay. Obviously, a huge factor in retro game collecting. It established prices in a lot of ways. You just look up completed auctions. You can see what these games are valued at, real values. And it helped make gaming super mainstream, retro game collecting super mainstream, I should say. Number 1, YouTube. Beginning in 2006 with the angry Nintendo nerd, James Rolfe, and he, pretty soon thereafter became the angry video game nerd. He got people really interested in old games. And yeah, it was just to make fun of them or talk about how bad they are, certain titles, or how angry you would get at the NES for certain reasons. But it really helped put a spotlight on old games, and people would buy these games. They would, want to seek out these games, on eBay or whatever, at, conventions or whatever. Retro gaming stores weren't, nearly as ubiquitous then as they are now. But anyway, you get the idea. Just to seek out these games, to play them, just to see how bad they were, or to just see, you know, and around this time, a lot of angry video game nerd copycats started showing up online. A lot of YouTubers got their start in 2008, 2009. A lot of the really familiar YouTubers that you guys know now, the ones that have, you know, 100,000, 200,000 subscribers, 1 million subscribers, a lot of them started around 2007, 8, and 9. And, you know, it was early on when you could get a lot of subscribers quickly, and that really got people into retro gaming in a big way. I mentioned earlier in the video that 2006, 2007 was a huge, huge time for the mainstreaming of retro gaming. A lot of that had to do with the Wii Shop channel and the Angry Video Game Nerd. I'm convinced of that. Now, coincidentally, maybe, or perhaps I played some small role in retro game collecting becoming sort of mainstream, was my classic home video game series. This is the hardcover set. I didn't want to put myself as a number here, and I didn't really want to talk about it in books either, because Leonard Herman and the Digital Press guys beat me to the punch. But it's my channel, so I thought I'd mention my books just a little bit. This is an original hardcover set. You know, the books are now available in paperback. The hardcovers are out of print. This one, the hardcover version, was published in 2007. That was right there, just a little bit after the Wii Shop channel, a year after the Angry Video Game Nerd, but it was right with that groundswell of you know, just retro game collecting starting to become mainstream. These have sold thousands and thousands of copies, and many people have told me, you know, they started collecting for the TurboGrafx for the first time, or they started collecting for the Odyssey 2 for the first time, or whatever, based on these books. So maybe I played a tiny role in helping retro gaming become mainstream. If I did, cool. Regardless, let me know in the comments what major events, or even smaller events, just evolutionary steps, what makes you think retro game collecting got super popular and where we are today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. And, you know, just thank you for being cool and into retro gaming. We will talk to you guys later. Let me see if I have the Activision collection that I'm looking for.